Alright, the lesson for Thursday, April 7th, is pretty simple. This year I've pushed you through a tough pace, although it seems at times that we were frozen on topic for a few days, up to weeks if you remember solving. I think we solved for a whole month, but that was just to make sure that we actually knew what we were doing. We were still moving pretty fast for this particular class at certain times. Our job in 134A is to get through chapters 1 through 6. That means that you have 3 chapters per semester, which is pretty much 1.5 chapters per quarter. And if you remember, in the third quarter, before we came home, we actually learned chapter 4, which was telling if a line was increasing or decreasing. We did the y equals mx plus b. We used a table to find the shift of the rule. And we also did chapter 5, which is rate of change, using that y1 or y2 minus y1 stuff. We graphed standard form. We graphed slope intercept form, and we did everything else in chapter 5, but we did all that before we came home. And a lot of other classes at that point had not gotten to chapter 5 when we came home, or when we were sent home. And so what that means is we were only left with 1 chapter to learn by the end of the year, and that our activities were going to be spread out over time to give you time to actually learn what was going on, kind of like in solving. So we had a whole quarter pretty much to learn chapter 6, and then we were going to go through and pretty much just get some extra practice on it. But in terms of what you've expected to learn, chapter 6, you've seen it all. Hopefully you have something in mind, should be mind, about the following topics. Substitution is where you put a box around the y, you put a box around whatever y is equal to, and you put it into the second part. You distribute, you do all that stuff. That's the 6.2 stuff that you did. Elimination, where you take, if this was a system, you take the number up here, multiply up here, you take the number here, multiply it down there, make your x's match, switch the bottom row, etc. Solving by graphing, that was the easy one, where all you had to do was just make sure you know how to find the coordinate of where the lines actually cross. Graphing inequalities is where you graphed as usual based off what we learned in chapter 5. Then you test 0, 0. If it's true, you go towards it. If it's false, you go away from the line. And the last thing that you had to learn on this was to graph systems of equalities, which was to find the alligator. Now, I know that I didn't give you homework on actually going through graphing and shading, but because I know that you'll be starting here next year, I just wanted you to have the general idea. So again, as long as you've seen how to solve by substitution and you have at least a decent idea right now, I think you'll be fine next year. As long as you understand how to make the x's match and you've gone through the process a couple times, whether you've made it successfully or you've kind of stumbled on some things, I think that'll be fine. We should know how to solve by graphing, so you've seen it. When you see it again, it should be easier. So again, all the stuff that you have right now in your head honestly meets everything that is there. So you've been exposed to all topics necessary, and due to having to work at home, there's a limit to what I could expect you to do in your own home, since I can't be there with you to give you extremely challenging questions and help you through them and talk you through them. Pretty much everything by my standards and expectation is done. And because we worked so hard before quarantine, and because instead of doing one lesson every other day, which I think some teachers did, and we did one lesson per day, this represents the end of your video. So I need you to enjoy your summer and stay safe. Remember that we don't really know what's going on. Don't make a silly mistake, a silly decision that was made out of listening to somebody else. Pay attention, open your eyes. Just make sure you're being responsible in your choices, because this is although it seems like it's not, it could be a dangerous period of time that a lot of things could change. So don't get caught up in that stuff. And just be sure to up your level of responsibility, because we might have to start next year in this fashion. A lot of students are assuming that there is a way out by doing nothing. In other words, they're looking and saying, since you're making us stay at home, and since there's no way you can force me to work at home, I'm still going to pass the class, because it's against the law for you to force me to fail if you're making me stay out of school. But the only way to really get out of doing nothing at all, especially if you go into your next class and you don't know what you're supposed to know, is to take the class over, which is similar to getting an F. So if you're sitting at home right now thinking, well, I'll just not do anything at all and then I'll be fine. If you left as a freshman and you do nothing at all, you are going to come back next year as a freshman, because that's where you stopped. So please be sure to log in and do whatever you're supposed to do if this occurs. I would hate to see you essentially fail a class because you just didn't feel like doing the work at home. I know it's tough to do, but I think teachers are trying their best to adjust their assignments so that you actually can move forward without having to get everything. Like, we're really being asked to trim everything down, which is why, as I said in my lessons, you didn't have to do a lot of stuff because we just want you to know the information, the essential information for what you need. And the reason why you don't have an excuse is because companies are giving free Wi-Fi. I think you can probably get free Wi-Fi wherever you are. Schools are giving out electronic devices and loaning them out to you. So that kills that excuse, and in the end, there's no excuse to not do it. So the school system has every right to have you catch up by taking the class again, which again, just like getting an F. So please make sure that, if first off, make sure in your other classes you're doing what you need to do. Please call people that you know aren't doing what they're supposed to do, and please warn them of this, because again, it's something we haven't experienced before, but it is going to change a lot of people's lives if they aren't doing their jobs, because it is just like failing the class. So outside of that, thank you for working so hard this year. I know I can come off as a bit crazy or mean, but I understand what's in front of you. I know that all it takes is one bad choice to ruin 14 years of good choices. My level of strictness is just to ensure that you learned enough self-control to think about what your consequences are before simply reacting emotionally. So I'm not asking you to control your emotions because they're natural, but you can control outbursts of emotional reaction by finding other ways to process your stress. So in the class times when you saw someone snap on me in the beginning of the year, and you noticed at the end of the year they didn't snap on me, they kind of thought about it and they realized that, yes, I want to go off on this short man, but there's other ways to do it, and I don't want to face whatever's coming. That's a positive thing for you to face. That's an adult thing to do. And again, the only thing you have to add to that is how to learn how to communicate with the person and say, hey, I really don't like how you said this. Is there any way that we can, avoid that situation in the future? But anyway, I say all of this to say it's been a pleasure teaching all of you. Good luck throughout the rest of your high school careers. Take care.